Welcome back to the PC Gamer Weekender. I'm joined by Gary and Adam from Fireblade Software, who are here to show us a bit of Abandoned Ship. Guys, this is the game that you've brought to the show, and you just did your talk this morning.
Yes,
is that right? How did that go?
Yeah, really good. It was packed, which was fantastic.
That's the first thing. That's the first thing today.
It was
right?
11 o'clock. Yeah,
Crazy.
It was lovely to see. A little bit terrifying, but also lovely to see.
Gary, you've got a bit of a story with this event because I met you last year in the pub after the Saturday night.
Yeah, that's right.
And you were here just as a member of the public, a punter, shall we say?
Yeah, so I came to the show as a punter, and we just started Abandoned Ship. We've been working on it for about a month, so it's very, very surreal to be here today, demoing the game.
It's kind of awesome at the same time, right? Like that's
totally.
how you know this, and this is your indie debut, right? Like, this is your kind of first.
Yeah, so the team have been in the industry for quite a while. I'd been a developer for 13 years and realised that I'm never going to get to make my own games unless I actually go and make them.
Yeah.
So we kind of all took the brave step to go and do it, and well, so far it's been a really enjoyable experience.
Great. Well, tell me a little bit about what Abandoned Ship is and kind of what the concept is.
Yeah, so Abandoned Ship is a game where you take command of a ship and a crew, and you explore a diverse, procedurally generated world where you take on quests and events, and some of those events will end up putting you in combat. So the world's procedurally generated, and there's permadeath and other elements that are kind of associated with that roguelike genre.
Cool.
And today's demonstration, we're going to focus on the combat side.
Great. All right. Well, shall we cut to the game then, and we can have a quick look?
So if we load up Lone Ship 1.
So you have these lovely Age of Sail era vessels.
Yeah, so the game's based on Age of Sail vessels, which it's set in a grounded fantasy world. And what I mean by that is it's similar technologically speaking to the 1700s, but it allows us to do some cool things and spice up the gameplay where we need to, like having sea monsters.
Right.
It's obviously a very cool thing to have. Now, we've also based the art style of the game on those classic naval oil paintings. Artists like Turner and Van der Velde.
Yeah, you see that in the sort of the sea is the colours of the waves and the kind of
we liked that aesthetic because it was something we hadn't really seen in games before, and it was a perfect fit thematically with the ships, but also tonally as well, because we didn't want this game to be a jaunty pirate's tale.
Right.
You know, we kind of look at it as more master and commander than say Pirates of the Caribbean. And you know, this world should be tough, you know, living on the edge and grueling, and a lot of those paintings can be very dramatic and dangerous feeling as well. So tonally, it felt like a good fit as well. Now, when we came into this view, which we call the Lone Ship view, and is something where you can kind of set your default preferences, but there might be events that take you to this view, like cannibals.
So this is almost like your not your like encampment screen, but your sort of like resting position where you can upgrade your ship.
Yeah, and that's an interesting way of looking at it. So when the camera first pulled in, we removed the sails so that we have, we don't want the rigging or anything like that obscuring the gameplay area of the deck. And of course, when you're fighting an enemy, which we'll get to shortly, we want to ensure that the sails aren't obscuring the enemy. Now, there's a few things I'll quickly go over here, but basically the ship is split into sections. Things like the helm at the back there controls manoeuvres. The centre is where the masts are, and they control your speed when you're changing distance. Sick bays at the front, which is where your crew go to heal themselves. And in the quarter starboard sides in the middle of the ship are our cannon batteries. We have tons of different weapons in the game, which we'll show you in a little bit, but this ship here has some round shot cannons, which are very versatile, and we have some flamethrower cannons, which are very short range but particularly nasty. And there are some other weapons dotted around the ship, like the front is a swivel gun, which targets the sails, but it does lots of damage to them. And at the rear of the ship is a swivel gun, which is anti-personnel, short range to aim flame. And we also have a mortar in the sick bay as well, which does a lot of holding.
Where you might traditionally find a mortar.
Yes.
In a hospital.
Yeah.
So, what role do the individual crew members play? Do you just assign them to the stations and they do their thing, or do they have their own skill sets? How does that?
So they all have their own specialities, and in the game you can train them up to have different specialities. But we have so the navigator's best on the ship's wheel.
Right.
Each crew member can do anything, but you'll get a bonus from having the right crew member in the right place at the right time. And that can mean the difference between winning or losing a battle. Right. There's the Marine is good at boarding, so it gets a bonus in melee. The surgeon can heal crew members outside of sick bay. The gunner's best reloading weapons, and the sailor gets a bonus to repairing. The most important person on the ship is the captain, not just because they're the captain, but we want the player to be the captain.
Right.
Now, the reason for that is that in a lot of games like this, the player tends to be essentially the spaceship or the vessel they're travelling.
Yeah.
And when that's destroyed, it's game over. And that's fine. However, for us, that didn't feel right. We wanted to push that further. So, what happens if the ship sinks and the captain's still alive but clinging onto driftwood, stranded alone in the water? What happens if they make it to the lifeboat? So for us, we enter a special game mode at that point, and we can, have all these different events that hook into that kind of stranded.
I suppose within the context of a game with some roguelike elements, that gives you conditions for failure that aren't totally apocalyptic, right?
Yes. So you're able to, look, it's not good if you're in a lifeboat, but equally you can, although you might end up dying from that, equally you can make it back to port, you can get rescued, get a new ship and crew and continue your journey. But basically, as long as the captain is alive, there's always hope. So we'll take a look at combat now. While Adam's playing, I'll explain a few things that are going on. So each of the sections has their own health bar, and that's in the bottom right corner of the screen. And when the sections go into the different coloured parts of the health bar, then their performance gets affected. So orange will be 50% effective, and red will stop functioning entirely. Now Adam's got some short-range weapons, so ideally he wants to get close to the enemy ship so he can use those. So there's a bar to change your distance from the enemy on the left-hand side of the screen, so he's clicked to do that. And he's using some of his longer-range weapons to target the sails on the enemy ship. Now his goal there is to get them into damaged enough so that now he can start to get a little bit closer.
I see, so the health of their sails and their ability to manoeuvre affect how close you can get.
And they can repair those. So now Adam's actually received some hull crack damage. So one of the ways that a ship can sink is by taking on too much water. If your water gauge reaches the top, that's it, it's game over. But Adam's done a few things here to kind of swing the battle a bit more in his favour, because he was taking a bit of a pounding. When he got within range, he fired some harpoons which attached to the enemy ship, and that stops the enemy ship moving away unless they cut the ropes. And then he was able to ram them, which caused a bit of damage. But also he's within range now to use some of his more devastating weapons like the flamethrowers, and of course the enemy crew are going to deal with fires that break out on the ship. So they're kind of on the back foot a bit now because they're having to react to some of the things that Adam's doing. So another hull crack has appeared, and they're still doing damage, but Adam's on the ascendancy here.
Right.
Now, Adam can choose to leave those hull cracks for the time being because his water gauge is quite low, but it's something you have to be mindful of because you don't want it to get too high. And he's got somebody at the back of the ship that's on the pumps, and they lower the water gauge. But of course, that crew member that's on the pumps isn't then doing something like manning the weapons. So we try to kind of strike this fine balance where the player is always having to make interesting and difficult decisions about what they do at that moment in time.
If presuming that the battle is successful, if this damage has still been done, does that then persist? Do you then need to find the time to repair it?
Yes. Yeah. So one of the things we'll show you next is going to port where you can repair your ship.
But it might be a case of look at this is going rather well.
Well,
not for them, honestly.
Yeah, so Adam's won there, but he's taken quite a lot of hull damage. So if he went into another battle, it would be a bit touch and go as to whether he'd make it out of that. So in the game, it would probably be wise for him to then go to Paul. So the other side of the game, which we're not showing today, is the exploration mode, and that's a much more pulled out camera, and you click around the map and trigger these quests and events and find ports and find all the interesting things in this world to discover. So let's go to a port actually. So we've only recently implemented this. So you can do things like go to a tavern and recruit new crew members, but we're going to go to the shops. So it's probably best thing for us to do is to repair our ship. We've given ourselves a fair bit of money here, so we can essentially buy what we want. Now, each slot on the ship is currently full, so we'll sell a couple of our weapons so we can get all of these new ones. And we offer tons of weapons in the game, all with different varying effects that change how the gameplay works. And we want those to be significant differences. There's no sort of cannon with +1 damage, it's all big changes. So, for example, that bar shot, which Adam will equip by dragging onto the correct slot on the ship. That doesn't do any damage to the sails, but it stops the enemy moving for a couple of seconds, which in that last battle, when Adam wanted to get close, that would be a really effective technique to get close. The suppression swivel gun is what I call a disruptor weapon, in that it doesn't damage the crew, but it disrupts their plans.
Right.
When you hit crew members with those, they'll drop to the floor and be stunned for a couple of seconds. And that might be really useful if they're just about to fire their weapons on you. We're going to sell our flamethrowers because they're quite short-ranged, and we'll equip the lobber, and that's more powerful the further away you are from an enemy ship. Right. So this next combat that we'll have will be a bit more long-ranged.
So in that context, you might use like the bar shot to keep them at distance.
Yes, exactly. And also we'll increase the number of cannons we've got on that as well.
I see. Right.
So we'll equip that mortar as well. So we'll sell that. So the mortar we had has a chance of causing fires, but this new one doesn't. This one causes a single hull crack that punches through the deck, but then explodes from the inside, so that causes more hull damage. And we'll take a look at some of the upgrades as well. So we have hull armour, which will you equip in the same manner by dragging onto the correct slot, and that will make us a bit tougher. There's hull spikes. Adam was doing a bit of ramming in that last battle, and this will cause more damage when he rams. But also, if somebody rams us and we've got spikes, that will damage them.
So again, if you've built your strategy around long-range play, it might still be worth equipping that just to give you a even if you're not planning to ram somebody, it's still useful.
Yes. We've already got water pumps. It's a shame that's not the automatic pumps because they don't need to be manned, and then that frees up a crew member to do something else. So if you're plagued by hull cracks and taking on water, then that's a particularly useful thing to have. We'll take the icebreaker. We're not fighting anywhere that's icy, but I like the look of it. So,
rule of cool is a legitimate way
exactly right. So
how does that fit in actually?
So in combat, if you're fighting in Arctic locations where there are icebergs, then you won't sustain damage from hitting those.
Okay.
In exploration mode, there are certain maps that you cannot enter unless you have the icebreaker.
Right.
They're essentially ice sheets. So let's go to the next combat then. And this one, weather effects are coming into play. So it's going to be in a storm. There's lightning, which means that if that hits the deck of one of the ships, that will start a fire. But also because it's stormy, we might have to contend with tidal waves. Now, tidal waves hit both ships and knock everybody to the floor. And unless you pass a brace for impact test, a crew member could be swept overboard.
Right.
Now, they might drown, but it looks like both ships have a winch, so you can winch those back in, but winches need to be manned. So again, you're pulling your finite number of crew off.
Yeah, and I can imagine the scenario maybe where you almost sacrifice that person because if you've got someone manning the winch, then you've functionally lost two people for at least the duration of that's happening.
And if that is the final shot that could mean the difference between surviving or being destroyed, then you let the crew member drown.
Yeah.
So Adam's strategy here is really wants to keep his distance to fire the lobbers. It looks like he was trying something that didn't quite work out, which I've watched Adam play this quite a bit, so I know he's quite an aggressive player. So he rammed them to knock them on their feet so that he could then use that window to get away.
Right, I see.
It didn't quite work out because his sails they just fired and got them into the red, so he couldn't move until he's repaired them. But he's been quite clever with his use of the suppression gun, which stuns crew, and he used it to shoot the guy on the wheel.
Right.
Because nobody can pilot the ship when they're stunned. Mm-hmm. That gave him a bit of time to move away. So looks like lightning's just hit the enemy ship actually. Did lightning hit your ship as well? Is that why you have fires?
Maybe.
Oh right. Here's the tidal wave, right?
Right.
So that's quite handy because the tidal wave will put out the fire.
You know, every cloud.
Yes. And it looks like everybody passed their bracelet with us, so nobody made it into the water. But Adam's doing quite well in this battle. He's got them down by quite a lot of health there. So.
What determines success in the brace for impact check?
So there's a button at the bottom of the UI which you have a small window to press.
Oh, I see.
And we have some audio cues where the captain yells out, "Brace for impact." Sounds
Suitably dramatic. Yeah.
Okay, so Adam's got some spikes here, so he's using those to, and that took out the ship. Now, Adam's done well enough there that he can probably afford to get into another combat if he plays as well as he did. So
right.
He might not quite so urgently need to go find a port.
Will the availability of those upgrades vary based on where you are, or random chance, or?
Yeah, so if we've got time, we'll show you some of the variation
course, yeah.
in there. So if we can go to the second main ship view, so there's lots of variety in the game, both in terms of where you are in the world and also what is in the world. Mm-hmm. So for example, this is tropical, it's turquoise waters. It's dusk. It's clear weather and the water's choppy. Whereas if we skip forward a scene, so you go to an Arctic biome, the waters are very dark here. So, for example, you'd only expect the icebreaker to be sold in Arctic locations.
Right.
And we have this variety partly because it's interesting to look at, but we always try and make it hook into the gameplay where we can. But also, the sea has quite a lot of personality in real life, so we wanted to kind of replicate that. So if we skip forward again, so this is a temperate location, and the weather's clear. So then if we just make the weather overcast, that looks significantly
We've got
different.
Britain.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. And it's raining here, so rain extinguishes fires, which is a help or a hindrance depending on how you set up your ship. I once geared my ship entirely to have flaming weapons, which something that extreme can be quite effective until you go to, say, a raining map where it extinguishes your fires. And
Right,
kind of
I see. So in terms of a given run, a given campaign, given that there is permadeath and you will permanently lose things, what is your objective? What drags you through that world?
So there is a story. We're going to talk about that a bit more, but for now it's enough to say that there is a doomsday cult that worships some of these sea monsters that I talked about, and it's about defeating those and putting a stop to Armageddon, essentially.
Great.
Well, so your standard goes for that. Now there's the main story, but we want it to be really fleshed out well. So there's lots of side quests and things to do. They're optional, but they're for players if they want to explore everything. Adam, if you can skip it forward. We'll just whiz through some of these. So this is the daytime. If we skip forward now through to dusk and nighttime,
in lilac ocean, beautiful,
and dawn. So a lot of those paintings which are artistic inspiration and really quite extreme visions of the sea.
Absolutely.
So that's kind of where we tried to kind of carry that through. So we've just gone through the times of day there, and these are all just changing one thing at a time.
It's interesting that you're doing the time of day stuff without the sky, which is the most, in terms of how games express climate and weather, it tends to be vertical to these guys. You've done it all with the surface of the sea, which is really interesting.
Yes. let's go look at the roughness of the weather. So of the water, sorry. So everything you've seen so far has been choppy waters, and we'll look at both extremes now. So I believe the next one's still. So the wake is the only thing that's disturbing the water here. But these are sort of the conditions where you might have fog, and fog with massively obscure visibility in combat. But if we now look at the kind of the final one here, which is the storm, and we've seen that in combat already. Obviously, it's a lot of water's foamy and rough, and we have these tidal waves and other weather effects that come into play. So I hope by what people at home have seen here, they kind of get an understanding of what it is that we're trying to achieve. Is that we have all these different systems at play, and they all interlock with each other and have interesting effects, and they're all geared so that the player can be put in a position where they have to make interesting and difficult decisions. And sometimes that will be tough, but who doesn't like to triumph against those circumstances because of the decisions you made as a captain? Yeah.
Great. Well, guys, thank you so much for bringing the game onto the live stream. It's much appreciated. It's looking really promising. How far away are you? Where are you? I mean, we won't say exactly, but well, I guess two questions. How can people find out more, and when can they expect to see more from Abandoned Ship?
You can follow us on Twitter and Facebook. If you go to the website, which is abandonedshipgame.com, then you can sign up to the newsletter, and you'll get your name in the game as a randomly generated crew member then.
Great.
And we're on Steam, so please add us to your wish list if that is your inclination. We're going to talk more about our release plans a bit later on, but we will be releasing this year.
Okay, great. Thanks very much, guys.
Thank you very much.
We'll be back very soon with a chat about Sunless Skies.